I know these episodes were finished ages ago, I get it, but oh my god, after daring to point out a tiny Nakatsuru misstep in the last video, it was like the man himself dove back in time to episode 4's production and specifically said, "Fuck you, AJ, because oh my god, did he deliver some of the most spectacular corrections and completely remind me why he was Toriyama's closest imitator." This episode has so many redraws from him, it is nuts. He really bolstered the art quality of this episode so hard, and the results are wonderful. There's just something about his line work and approach to shape design that I personally adore, and it is amazing to see the schedule allowed him to contribute in such a big capacity like this. It's so interesting to see shots get tweaked in really minor ways that just enhances the overall competency of the drawings. I think the aspect that will maybe divide people the most will be the areas where he significantly corrected where the original drawing was actually okay in the first place, but maybe wasn't taking into account that this is a modern Toriyama show. In other words, it was off-model. In this particular example, he shrunk the eyes, altered the nose into its button shape, and made the smiling mouth wide rather than tall. In another, other than fixing the eye line that was completely wrong, he rounded out the jaw, added the button nose, and turned the pupils more circular rather than oval shaped. These are all aspects that bring it in line with modern Toriyama and of course Daima's character sheets. While I can understand that someone might prefer the original stylistically, I do want to be really clear. These are good corrections. We shouldn't be afraid of corrections. The underlying intent is still there, all the motion is maintained, the expressions are great, they just adhere to the sheets now, and that's his job. And I'm not gonna lie, I personally do prefer these. And that's kind of wild for me to say, given that the chief animation director for this episode is Naohiro Shintani? Yeah, the very same Shintani who was handpicked by Toriyama and overhauled Dragon Ball's visual design from top to bottom with the DBS Broly movie. But I think that speaks to not just my personal love of Nakatsuru's style, but to his approach to corrections. Let's be really clear here, this episode looks fantastic, and if you somehow don't think so, well, I don't know what to tell you, maybe hit Specsavers or something. Nothing was steamrolled here, you can still see Shintani's art style all over this episode, and it's such a delight. Shintani's own corrections of other people are great too, helping to fix up some of the derpy faces here and there, but more than anything, it's his own key animation that I personally found to be the highlight. He's an animator who really seems to adore character work more than action, and that shines through here in this scene. I often describe many scenes as bouncy when it feels like characters are sort of squashing and stretching in all kinds of loose ways, but in Shintani's case, Goku is literally bouncing with excitement. These drawings go up and down, up and down, up and down, and he's not just jumping between the same keys here, he's animating straight ahead with all new drawings that add such great organic energy to everything. In some of the other scenes that have his corrections, you can find that same energy applied with so many awesome looking expressions. The shopkeeper bounding around with an array of crazy smears is so much fun. It's just great to see Shintani taking charge of exactly what he does best. This episode really was the Shintani and Nakatsuru show, which is kind of interesting because the base animation director here is Yuichi Hamano, who's no small fry either. He's a long-serving animator with a crazy catalogue of fantastic scenes, beloved for their snappy timing and razor-sharp effect shapes, something that you may remember from his short scene in Battle of Gods. Alas, I cannot see his AD work here at all, which is apparently exactly what it was like to try and find his work on Dragon Quest Dai, so I guess it wasn't very good? Who knows? Someone I can pick out though is my boy Shuichiro Manabe. He's back for the second week in a row, doing even more cool action, and if you didn't catch my previous videos, just a reminder that he is a superstar. Get it? Dragon Ball Superstar? No? Okay. Well, he handles the Glorio fight against this giant winged tadpole-looking thing, and this is by far his most complex work on the show so far. Obviously, this thing is chock full of great-looking effects and cool-looking smears that I could go on about all day, but I think what really stood out to me the most is just how much the characters transition their distance from the camera. Whether it be Glorio weaving through things or the beast lashing its tail, by moving back in the frame, there's a great sense of depth and dimensionality added. On top of the cool layering later on, it just makes for a surprisingly complex and impactful scene, and hey look, Manabe animated another flip. I think that might just be his thing now, or maybe it always was. The elephant in the room though is that this is another Kashima board. which at this point is just really fucking funny. That's not a complaint, I actually quite like this board, and it was successful enough that it convinced my entire community server this was someone else when we were live watching the episode. While there are some flat shots and claustrophobic moments, there is once again a lot of really nice stuff in here, whether it be mini set pieces like the characters falling through the air, the canted angles and returning distortions, or even an array of uncharacteristically dynamic framing. It's a decent enough effort, but I think where Yoshima has never failed is in the action boarding. Now don't get me wrong, key animators are allowed to suggest deviations from boards to make their work more interesting, and that has happened, but his boards are quite detailed in how he lays out each individual movement, so that's not to take away from him, but it does at least explain some discrepancy between scenes. The general flow and framing stays the same, which shows Yashima's strengths, but animators get to play around with the movement within that framework. And the big playground in which they're working in this week is Goku's awesome Nyoibo action. It kicks off with what looks like Yohei Sasaki's work, an animator I mentioned a couple videos ago, but essentially a very strong action star who really made a name for himself over many years working on Gintama. I find his animation really interesting because of how he kind of spaces his frames out. It creates like a stop-start effect. You get fast movement, and then it slows, and then it's fast again, and then it slows. There's a rhythm to his action that creates a sort of snappiness that I find really appealing. It just looks so cool, and I love the big inky line work on foreground characters compared to Goku in the background. Again, it's giving some real punch and depth to the image. Ken Otsuka jumps in next with Goku running along the roof, but it's one of those scenes that I think also speaks to Yashima's boarding abilities. This is a legitimately cool use of the environment and a sick transition. I'm a big fan of this POV shot. Next up, Otsuka animates this side-on sliding shot of Goku taking down everyone in one continuous cut. It's got those very intense ruled lines that he likes to do, and very similar effects to his other work. I will say that it is very funny that the floor and background are constantly moving here. It's a great way to add dynamism to a scene, and you will see this all the time in so many different action scenes, but typically when you do that, you occlude the feet and characters come in from alongside the screen rather than across it. Here you can see their feet and it kind of just looks like everyone is ice skating. I can see the illusion that they were trying to go for, but it doesn't really feel like this was animated with that compositing in mind. It just looks a little bit off. The end of this segment is so fucking sick though that I just don't really care. Despite being Otsuka's work still, the looseness of this particular cut actually reminded me a hell of a lot of Shintani's own key animation, and for that to then follow up with Goku zooming across the screen really is just the icing on the cake. Absolutely insane work from Ken Otsuka here. 30 whole seconds of pure awesome. I mean, when did we last see a Nyoibo action this cool? If there's one hope I have for this series, it's that once we reach the Super Saiyan scenes and beyond, I need Goku to keep using that bad boy. It adds such a refreshing mix to the combat that I will be so sad if it ever gets put to bed again. I am, however, gonna end this video on a slightly down note. We're gonna switch tones. Because while I did enjoy this episode, it's got great art, great animation, some really cool ideas, I didn't think it was as cohesive and well executed as the episodes that preceded it. And to me, that's on the director, a man called Kan Murakami. Maybe I'm crazy, but the comedy didn't feel as well timed as before. I didn't get a sense of atmosphere from scenes that I felt should have been oozing with it. It tackles something as bleak as life-stealing and oppression, and it's a shame that those scenes didn't hit with a level of gravitas that I think they really should have had. This was Murakami's first time directing solo, having only served as an assistant director prior to this, and while Daima's been doing a really good job of showcasing and training up new talents, I think that freshness got the best of him a bit here. It's a very fun episode, but probably not quite as good as it could have been on that front. It does, however, look like we are back to quality direction next week, with the preview showing some very atmospheric shots. I am especially excited for the next couple of episodes, and one in particular that I hear is very, very good. But that's it for this week. Just a quick short one this time. Let me know what you thought of the episode in the comment section below. Drop a like if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you're new, and I will see you next time.